Dave, we're here at the Rigs and Techniques. I got to tell you, I missed you last week.
Yeah, man.
But
you were having fun. You were having fun.
We certainly were. You know, you're talking about wire leader. We were down there with Chad fishing for kingfish, and they got some teeth, but sharks for sure.
Yeah, he's the ultimate toothy critter. You know, a shark's teeth, they keep growing their whole life. They keep growing new ones. A new row comes up, they'll shed them, and a new row comes up. And that's why we have all these millions of shark teeth laying around and fossil records and everything, because they just produce millions and millions of teeth all the time. But what we need to do is once we get something in that mouth, we need it to come back out, you know, because you have to use a circle hook. When you're fishing in state waters in Texas, you have to have a non-offset, non-stainless steel circle hook. And what a non-offset hook is one that you can lay flat on a table and it won't, you know, the hook point is facing directly at the shank of the hook.
That's correct.
If it's off to either side, it's called an offset hook.
Correct.
And what those offset hooks can do, because we're using a big bait and we want the shark to swallow it all the way down, that offset hook will sometimes catch on soft tissue in his throat or in his mouth, and we'll pull and pull and pull, and then finally it'll tear out. It won't get that corner. Now, a non-offset hook will find that corner of the jaw, and once that thing gets in that corner of that jaw, it's hard for it to come out. Not only that, it keeps all the rest of your leader out of his mouth.
Right.
So a lot of times, for smaller sharks like the bonnet heads and the little spinner sharks and black tips and whatnot that we can catch in the surf, we can use a small circle hook, even with sometimes light monofilament leaders, and get like these here. You know, you can get, this is a surf rig, but this is a pre-made surf rig. But you can use a mono sometimes, even a 20-pound monofilament, and you can still catch bonnet heads and stuff like that. Right. You'll lose a few rigs, but you know, this is a good example right here though. This is a pre-made rig. And
but you couldn't technically use this.
Exactly.
Because there's your offset hook, guys.
Right. If you go into a store and buy a rig sometimes, it might not
be in
compliance with the regulations in the state, because they ship these rigs all over the place and they don't know what's going on. So you know, you gotta be careful when you're out there doing that. Now we've got some single strand wire here, which is the same kind of stuff you use for kingfish and whatnot. And when you're building yourself one of these wire leaders, if you're fishing from a boat and you're catching sharks that are over 100 pounds, you want to make sure you have really good swivels and a long leader. Longer than you'd normally put for a kingfish or something like that, because a lot of sharks like to roll up in the leader, especially when they get alongside the boat. They'll do like an alligator and they'll just start rolling, and they'll roll themselves all the way up the leader until they get to your main line. Right. And they have that really rough skin. Sharks have really hard, rough skin, and it'll chafe through your main line,
especially spinners.
Correct. Yeah. So what we want, and when you're picking your hook, here's another thing. Not only is it a non-offset, offset type deal, you want to try to pick a hook with a really good gap in between. You know, a lot of them will come all the way down almost to the shank, but you want a wider gap, the wider the possible, because a shark has a really thick corner.
Right.
His jaws are really thick, and when you get that hook around there, you want it to have a big enough gap that it'll fit around the corner of the jaw. Not only that, we're using big baits. And when you have a great big bait like that, you still need to have a big gap, because now that bait is taking up some of that gap. If you can get the bait a little bit away from the bait, the hook away from the bait sometimes, like 3 or 4 inches, and have you a nice piece of 130-pound Dacron attached to the bait somehow.
Right. And
he swallows that whole mess down, the hook has to come out first if it's way out in front, if it's 4 or 5 inches out in front. And he'll swallow all that leader and junk down a good ways when he swallows that bait. So when you start to pull that bait slowly out, which is how we hook them, you know, we let them swim away, swim away, and then we put the drag up. And when we put that drag up and he comes swimming tight on it, it'll find that corner and it'll come out first. That hook will come out first, versus the bait coming out and him opening his mouth to let the bait out.
And the other thing people make mistakes is you got to match the hook and the wire size to the size fish that you're fishing.
Right.
Just like the swivel.
Right.
If you're fishing for little bonnet heads or little surf sharks, you know, stuff under 60 pounds, you don't need a hook of this size. You don't need wire of this size.
No, that's for a big bull shark, you know, or a big lemon shark, you know, a shark over 6 feet long. Let's
this is
say.
really nicely done, Dave.
Well, you know, you can put. I would put 2. If you always put 2 crimps, whenever you crimp in anything, especially a shark leader or any kind of leader, you know it's going to get a big heavy pull on it. If you put 2 crimps instead of 1, it'll never pull. It'll never pull apart.
I think I want to do a rigs and techniques where you just show us these knots on how to join this up.
Yeah, I wanted to show the braid where you melt the
let's do it. Let's
plastic.
just do it next week. We'll just continue this next week on how we promote that.
Okay, let's add to that segment how to or how not to approach or grab the shark once you get into the boat.
Exactly. We didn't get to that either.
That would be a bad day.